Hello, everybody. Welcome to the newest episode of Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. It is Monday, about 7 p.m. Eastern time. So we missed a week. So there's a whole bunch of more stuff that we can talk about. It's going to be fun. We got NBA playoffs coming up. We got one more week left of the regular season, and then play-in tournament and the playoffs start. And we're crowning a new NCAA men's champion tonight. LSU won the women's tournament yesterday. So, and it's Masters week. So there's we got a bunch of good stuff to talk about. But I wanted to open with this because we haven't gotten to talk about this yet. It was official that Lamar Jackson put out on his Twitter that he's requesting a trade from the Ravens. That they basically that they can't come to an agreement on his contract, and they are not able to meet his value, in his words. So that sparked all kinds of, interesting. I mean, we were already talking about Lamar Jackson a lot, but I'm just really, the first thing I'm confused by is, number one, when all the stuff came out about, well, what about the Patriots? What does everybody think about that? It blows me away that nobody has mentioned, like, the only place I heard say it was Mike Lombardi said it on his podcast, where it's like, that's not how the Patriots do business. Like, they didn't pay Tom Brady that much money. Why would they pay Lamar Jackson that much money?
Yeah.
He put it in a really good way. I thought he made a good point that, well, that'd be really disrespectful to Tom Brady if they all of a sudden decided, oh, we're just going to pay this guy out the nose. Like, but nobody's mentioning it. Everyone's so excited to talk about what a possibility of it that they can't control themselves. So, it just brings me to but what I can't understand, though, is why are more teams not going after Lamar Jackson? I don't get it.
Right. I think it's some combination of things. I mean, like with the contract, Peter King was quoted as saying the contract he wants would be an anchor for any team, and that's true. So I think there's a lot of teams that are apprehensive. Is there collusion? I don't know. I mean, I could see why you would suspect it, but I don't know. And also, it's just in terms of some teams don't know what the hell they're doing. Clearly. And I think some teams are like, oh, we don't want to run that kind of offense, or, we don't know how to. We don't have the personnel or the coaches to figure that out. Like I said, I think it's a combination of things. So, it is a little disturbing because it's like, Lamar Jackson's better than, I don't know, 15 other quarterbacks, maybe more. Particularly in the bottom, if you're one of the bottom 20 teams in the league, like, he's more than likely much better than what you have. So you would think more teams would go after him, but then it's kind of, there's some teams that don't know what they're doing, and there are coaches who are, for lack of a better word, delusional. The Commanders are going into the season with Sam Howell and who?
Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, we're fine." It's like, no, you're not winning the Super Bowl. You're probably not going to make the playoffs.
Well, and the crazy part is, like, how are these coaches getting away with saying this crap at these owners' meetings? Like, how is the media not calling them on it? Ron Rivera hasn't had a winning season since 2017. Okay,
yeah.
Like but we're fine with Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett. It's like, what are you talking about? And then the Falcons owner, well, I think teams are probably kind of concerned about his injuries. That's probably not why. It's like, but why does no reporter ask Arthur Blank, well, you were in on Deshaun Watson. You were trying to get him. Like, why won't you try to get Lamar Jackson? It's just, I can't, I'm confused. I'm confused by the entire thing. And then, you've got teams that it doesn't make sense to me. I understand, like, look, I think some of them are waiting till after the draft. I think part of it is that, they don't want to give up this year's draft pick. They want to be able to make it and then make the trade. So that's part of it. The other part of it is that I don't think teams don't want to do all the work for the Ravens. They don't want to make the contract so the Ravens can just match it.
Yeah, that's
I think that's kind of where the mindset is. But it goes back to my criticism of the Dolphins. They had until May 1st to decide on Tua's fifth-year option. They could have waited. There was no reason to do it right then. And it's like, well, and the other thing is, like, even if you're not going to sign Lamar, why wouldn't you meet with him? Because Mike Lombardi was saying this, like, no, you go meet with him to try to learn stuff about what's going on. Like, you're just, like, because Lamar's going to tell you what's going on with the team, with the Ravens. So you meet with him, even if you don't sign him. Like, he's like Al Davis, because, at one point Mark Lombardi worked for the Raiders. Al Davis was like, you go learn everything you can. Maybe we won't, we probably aren't going to sign the guy, but who cares? So it's like, I'm totally lost as to what these teams' attitudes are. And it's just, it makes absolutely no sense to me.
Well, I will say this though, with the Dolphins, you're the Tua fans. You're dealing with some delusional people, okay? And I hate. Maybe this is a bad comparison, but it's kind of like some of the Trump people. Like, you can't tell them anything different. Like, they know what's going on, and they think that they're persecuted and whatever else. And you can't tell them otherwise. They're not going to think differently about it. Okay? And with Tua, they feel like, well, you guys didn't do enough to support him right off the bat, and you were trying to get rid of him, and this is ridiculous because he's unbelievable. You just need to let him play, and you need to keep him healthy and do all this other stuff, And it's just, I do feel like there's some of that where they don't want to have that going on. And I think they want to, Chris Greer, from his perspective, is, well, I drafted the guy, so I got to stick with him. McDaniel, I think probably part of the reason they picked him was because he must have said to them that he thinks he can get a lot out of Tua, which he did. He got the most out of him that Tua's given, the whole time he's been in the NFL. But, I think so from their perspective, they want to be totally behind him right off the bat. They don't want to leave any doubt because they feel like that was part of why maybe he struggled the first 2 years, which maybe to an extent. I don't think there's no truth to that. But, and then I just think, I said delusional, that maybe that's the wrong word, but I just think...
No, it's the right word.
Just kind of talk themselves into different things. Like I was saying with Washington, McDaniel, you'll hear quotes about him. He thinks Tua's really, really good. He just thinks, well, we just got to keep him healthy. And it's like, well, you're not going to keep him healthy because he gets hurt. That's what he does. But they talk themselves into stuff. I mean, Bill Belichick talked him into, well, Matt Patricia is going to be the offensive coordinator. Never been an offensive coach in his life, but he'll be the offensive coordinator. So even coaches that are as accomplished as Belichick can talk themselves into ridiculous stuff. Which actually, maybe it makes more sense for an accomplished guy to talk himself into stuff. But some of these other guys who aren't accomplished, they'll still talk themselves into stuff. I mean, so I guess I'm with you. I don't really get it.
Yeah, I don't understand. And then the by the way, his name isn't Tua anymore. It should be Tua if he stays healthy. That should be his whole name. Just change it to that because this idea that if he just stays healthy, he's going to be awesome. And it's like, did anybody watch the games last year? Did you watch the games? Because he was good for about 4 games, and that was about it. And then he didn't play in about 5 games. So, he's not available as often as he is as how good he plays. Like, those are completely, opposite things. He's usually injured, and, he doesn't, like, we're acting like, oh my God, he was incredible, the passer rating, blah, blah, blah. It's like, don't give me stats. Just watch the games. Football's never been about stats, and, you can see it from watching the games. Like, this isn't, oh my God, if he stays healthy, he's awesome. That's not what this is. So I think we've just completely mischaracterized it. And at this point, if they haven't fired Chris Greer by now, I mean, they're obviously not going to.
Well, and look, like I said, it's only the 5th-year option, and it's not like it's an insane amount of money. So they're not fully locked into Tua yet. Like I'll just point that they're
Right,
not fully locked in yet. If he has a good year, they're probably going to give him an extension after the 5th-year option. Then they're locked in. So, I mean, obviously, I would have preferred that they not do the 5th-year option, but all hope is not lost for getting a better quarterback. We'll see. I mean, again, I still think this is somewhat of a make or break year, and I don't think if he gets hurt a lot this year, which could very well happen because it's not out of the realm of possibility, and in fact, it's more than likely. I don't know that they're necessarily going to give him a big extension.
Yeah, but how could you at this point? How could you need to see one more year? This is something.
I totally agree with you. Like I said, that's why I didn't want the 5th-year option.
What else do we need to see? I just don't. I don't get what else there is.
Well, I mean, in fairness, what I think's going to happen this year, I could be wrong, but what I think's going to happen is, he's not going to be nearly as good, this year as he was last year. And you and I have already said that we don't think he was necessarily all that great last year. So I think there's going to be a big coming down to earth for him, and we'll see what that looks like and then what that means moving forward. I just don't think he had a year last year where he threw 9 picks when he could have thrown 17. Okay.
Right.
And those things have a way of coming back to bite you. One year it doesn't hurt you, and then the next year more people catch the interceptions that you threw, So that could become a problem. People covering the middle of the field. The underthrown deep balls could get intercepted or batted down or not be pass interference. The offensive line could be worse, maybe. Who knows? Maybe they're led more by their defense this year. They've added to their defense. I think Vic Fangio's an upgraded defensive coordinator. So, there could be a, coming back down to earth. So that at least that's what I'm predicting.
Okay, so yeah, we'll cry about the Dolphins later. So let's talk about some quarterback stuff. So Chris Sims came out with his quarterback rankings, and he had Hendon Hooker and Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA. He had those guys in his top 5. So he had Stroud number 1, and then I think he had Bryce Young number 2, and then Hendon Hooker 3rd. So he's, he basically what he was saying was, he watched the tape, and this is just basically he watched their college tape, and then he tells you what he thinks. That's all this is. It's not. He's not going through all kinds of stuff. But basically he was like, I don't understand what people are watching where they don't have, Hendon Hooker and DTR up near the top of the list. He's like, because, his argument was basically, look, if Dorian Thompson-Robinson played at Alabama and not UCLA, if you switched schools with the quarterbacks, then Dorian Thompson-Robinson would be talking about being the number 1 pick. He's 6'1", he's 6'1", he's 20 pounds heavier than Bryce Young is. And and he was basically leading the offense. He's like, I'm watching the tape going, did this guy get into something off the field? Did he murder someone? Why is he not higher up the rankings? Hendon Hooker, I understand, is because of the knee injury, but he might still end up going in the first round.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was interesting that he liked Stroud the best. He's like, Stroud's ready to go right now. Bryce Young, obviously the size concerns and some other stuff. But I thought that was really interesting because I don't always agree with Chris Sims, but I feel like he gives you an honest take on it. And a lot of times he's right. He was right about Tua.
He was right about Tua, and he was right. What did he say about Herbert?
He had Herbert ahead of him. He had Herbert ahead of Tua. He had him right behind Burrow. So he's right about that. Now he had Zach Wilson ahead of Trevor Lawrence. I think he missed on that one. But he kind of missed on that. But all the stuff he said about Justin Fields is kind of true so far. I still like Fields, but so far he's correct about what's going on. And so I feel like I feel like it was an honest assessment. And I'm watching, listening to things he says, and I'm going, if one of these quarterbacks is there in the second round, that if I realize the Dolphins, I'm looking at their team, they're probably not going to draft a quarterback because they have Skylar Thompson and Mike White. So they're not likely to draft one, especially in the second or the third round, which is what you would have to do if you're going to get one of those guys. But yeah, it did kind of for all the stuff we've been watching, it does kind of concern me a little bit that it's like we're gonna talk ourselves into Bryce Young, as this spectacular talent. And listen, he's really talented. Like, I like him better than Tua, but all of the same stuff that was said about Tua, they're saying it about Bryce Young. He's a generational talent. He sees things that nobody else sees. He's got a, innate knack for whatever. So it's the same story, and he's smaller.
He sees things that nobody else sees. What is he, the Shadow? Like, what the fuck?
I don't know, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like they're talking about this great skill set, and it's just I feel like I've seen this movie before, guys.
Well, I think there needs to be, like, I wish, like, maybe Levitard show would do this or something, but, like, compile all the ridiculous things that people say about these quarterbacks. And then, like, 2 years from now.
Well,
like,
Dan Patrick does that. He brings the quarterback on and then has them read their scouting report before the draft.
Right.
So it's
no. I want it to be like they're in the league, and then people were way off on their evaluation of this person, and then, like, you actually have NFL tape to look at, and you like, and so people kind of know, and then you go back and see, like, I'm not talking about the bad things, I'm talking about the positive things that people say when they hype people up before the draft.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Because we've been watching this for decades now, and it just constantly happens, and nobody gets, like, taken to task over it. Nobody ever really, like, says, "Oh, I guess I was wrong about this." Like, nobody ever seems to do that. I mean, like,
right.
With Anthony Richardson and especially Anthony Richardson, it's like, guys, I understand that you think he's this great athlete and stuff, which he is, but it's like he's barely. How can you possibly know? Like, I just, and people will be like, "Well, what about Patrick Mahomes?" I'm like, well, I mean, Patrick Mahomes' dad was a Major League Baseball player. Patrick Mahomes played in college. I don't know. And he was going to Andy Reid. Like, I don't know. It's just hard for me to, the way people say this stuff. I mean, especially the Bryce Young thing. I just listen to these people, and it's infuriating. It's like, oh, well, I know the size thing, and then they move right on. I'm like, how can you move on from that? It's like, oh, well, it's just this little thing. No, it's a really big, well, it is a little thing because he's so small, but no, but it's such a big deal. I mean, people are acting like, oh, it's fine, whatever, and it's like, well, no. It's the same thing with, like, Anthony Richardson. It's like, can he operate from the pocket enough,
right,
to be an NFL quarterback? I mean, do we know? And it's like, I don't know. And then it's like, you're saying, well, all this stuff that he did in college, and I don't want to totally, all that Bryce Young did in college, I don't want to totally dismiss that. He did have to kind of carry Alabama last year because it wasn't one of their better teams. But I don't know how well that translates to the NFL.
Right. Well, that was the thing that surprised me was that when Chris Sims was talking about Hendon Hooker, like, because Tennessee runs that quirky, weird offense. And I was like, I don't know how you can tell the throws that he has to make. You can see he's a big guy and he can throw the ball really well, but that's obvious. But I just didn't know. I don't know how you can translate that. And the other thing, like what he said about Bryce Young, I thought was really interesting. Like, if Bryce Young had played at UCLA and not Alabama, he's not going number one. It's like, so what are we talking about now? It's like, so how much of it is the school that you're going to? So you've got the two guys that might go number one, right? C.J. Stroud went to Ohio State, never been a good Ohio State quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
Right. Bryce Young went to Alabama. We're still waiting for the really good Alabama quarterback.
I mean, who do we got? McElroy, A.J. McCarron. We got Tua. Is there anybody else?
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. Oh, there's one. Okay, there's one. Okay.
Right. Right. He also went to Oklahoma for a year, but yeah, there's one. Yeah, so it's just kind of I am fascinated in the draft. I really find the draft interesting, but I just don't know. I just don't know that I could do it. I don't know that I could have the number one pick and just base my franchise on a guy who he might not be able to play. Like, we could be a year in going, what the hell are we doing? And it's not like, here's the thing, and you're just asking a lot. Like Trent Dilfer said this about Russell Wilson. Like, okay, you can be that size, you can be 5'11", but you have to be exceptional at everything else. And that's just, like, let's go in the last 25 years, right? There's two guys, and one of them, Drew Brees, was drafted in 2001. So It's not like these guys don't succeed overwhelmingly. They don't succeed. And the drafting a quarterback in the first round is a 50-50 proposition at best.
Yeah, well, and also people go, oh, well, what about Kyler Murray? Yeah, he keeps getting hurt.
Right. And by the way, Kyler Murray is also an exceptional athlete.
True.
That's different. That's different than Bryce Young and Tua and these other small guys, Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield. They aren't the level of athlete that Kyler Murray is. So, and that's the point. Kyler Murray, he's struggling. And he has that huge advantage over the other small guys in that he can really move.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just, it blows my mind. Now, I want Bryce Young to succeed. Don't get me wrong. I really think it would be cool if he succeeded. Like a guy that size, if he was really awesome, that'd be great for the NFL. It'd be great for TV. I'd love to watch it. I think it'll be awesome. But it's hard for me to see, like, the teams that might draft him. I'm iffy on. I'm iffy on Carolina. I'm iffy on Indianapolis. Houston, I'm completely out on Houston. There's no way that's going to work. And the coach of the Houston Texans, D'Amico Ryans, is like, well, I mean, look how good he is in college. His size didn't matter in college, and it's like,
dude,
I don't know.
It's a different. I don't want to say it's a different sport, but it's just a different level of competition.
I just shake my head. Defensive coach, man. I just shake my head. They don't get it. It's amazing to me how they just don't get it. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think C.J. Stroud's a much safer pick. I would take him number one. He can do all of the stuff that Bryce Young can do.
Yeah,
and
some of these guys. Look, I do think some of it is where you get drafted, and are you in a good situation?
Absolutely.
Are you able to sit for as long as you need to develop? Don't let other people tell you that, like, there's no value in sitting. Patrick Mahomes sat for basically his whole first year. Okay. Yep. And then, I'm not saying that's the reason he became great, but I do think that that's important. Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years, and then even then he went 6-10 his first year. Then the next year he went 12-4.
Right.
So there can be value in that if you're drafted into the right situation that's stable for the first few years, where you're not keeping, like Peyton Manning had the same offensive coordinator for, I don't know how, for a long ass time. Okay. And right. I think that really matters. Brady had a relatively stable situation, the whole time he was in New England. So that kind of stuff matters. And I don't know if players are going to get that. I mean, like I said with Tua, like, there is something to that. I mean, you had a defensive coach his first 2 years,
right?
And then it was kind of like they had the offensive coordinator who was there for Ryan Fitzpatrick, and then you throw Tua into that. It's like, what are you doing? And then the next year they're firing coaches left and right, and you have an offensive coordinator who hasn't been an offensive coordinator before. There is something to that. Again, I still think there's limitations with Tua, but so I just think that some of this is where you get drafted, but some of it is also just like, there's no, like, literally, and Colin Cowherd talks about this, there's no way that, like, all 5 or 6 of these guys are going to be really good. There's probably going to be one, maybe, that's really good.
Right.
And then maybe there's a couple that are like, that guy's fine, you can win games with that guy. Like, for instance, Mac Jones is fine, you can win games with him. He's not unbelievable. But I did find it kind of funny how before he got drafted, people were like, well, he's clearly the most NFL ready. And I'm like, I mean, fine, I guess. But it's like, you could clearly see there's limitations with him. Like, what?
Yeah, and you look at Trevor Lawrence now, and you're like, what were you people talking about? Like, are you kidding me? Like, Trevor Lawrence is the one that's NFL ready.
Yeah, he just had a terrible coach his first year.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on the Dolphins. Like, they just two things can be true, right? I think Tua's just he's as good as he's going to be. He's going to be kind of inconsistent, and I don't think he's you can win games with him if he stays healthy, which both of those things probably aren't going to happen. But the Dolphins have not supported him the way that they should have. They didn't protect him well enough last year. They didn't run the ball well enough. They have a lot of things that they need to do better if they want this to work. And I feel like these teams it's like I feel like you need to bring these guys along. Like, you have to build it in a certain way, and you have to run your team the way that's best to help your quarterback. And I understand sometimes that's not always conducive to winning games, but like the Bengals the first year with Joe Burrow, they're throwing the ball 40 times a game, and of course the quarterback gets hurt. And it's like, and then we're trying to win games. Well, okay, but you drafted this guy. Do you want this? If you want this to work out, you need to build this thing slowly. You can't just throw it out there and go, well, we got to win games, so let's throw it 40 times.
Well, and it goes back to the defensive coach thing. Like, some offensive coaches get it. I mean, like Andy Reid, we just talked about, and then off of his coaching tree, Doug Peterson, he built up Carson Wentz and he got the most out of Carson Wentz, I guess you could argue, when he was in Philadelphia. And then obviously goes to Jacksonville, turns around Trevor Lawrence like immediately. Okay, well, maybe not immediately, but it took over the course of the season.
Pretty quick.
He kind of got into his own, whatever. Sirianni comes into Philadelphia, and they go to the playoffs with Jalen Hurts, and then last year they went to the Super Bowl. Okay, I don't know. I guess those are two really good examples, but again, those are offensive coaches, and they brought quarterbacks along the right way. And I just think unfortunately, for a lot of these quarterbacks, they get thrown into a situation which is not conducive to them being successful. So that's part of the reason why, when you look at like size or arm strength or their ability as an athlete, that's why you look at those things, because if you get thrown into a suboptimal situation, which a lot of them are going to be, do they have something about them that can carry them through? And a lot of them do not. Right. So that's why we get concerned about size, for example.
Yeah. I definitely agree. All right, so we'll move on from that. We'll move on to some NBA topics. So first of all, I thought this was interesting. Some news: the NBA Players Association and the owners signed a new collective bargaining agreement, which I think takes them through the rest of the decade, so 2030. So there were a couple things in there that kind of jumped out. Number one, there's going to be some kind of midseason tournament that they're going to do, which I don't know what the awards for that are going to be or what the payoff's going to be of that. But what I saw said they were going to start. They were going to do it in the fall, which I don't know. I guess have it done before the All-Star break. I don't know I don't know how that's going to work. There's so many details to be worked out. The other thing was that players have to play 65 games to be eligible for awards like MVP, All NBA, All Defensive Team, that kind of thing. So, and what I found is funny is like they're saying, all right, well, you got to play 65 games to be eligible for the awards. And I was like, yeah, you know what? That's the amount of games the season should be. Like, the season should be about 65 games. So I kind of came to a revelation this week. So I've been hearing all this stuff about, you're always hearing about players taking games off and load management and all this. And JJ Redick talks about this a lot on his podcast, and he basically confirms it with every player that he has on his show, that this is the teams doing this. The players are not going, I want to sit out, or I don't want to play tonight.
Yeah.
This is the teams using whatever data they're getting, right? They're tracking all the players' movements now, how far they run, how much effort they're exerting, all that stuff. They're tracking all these different things. I don't know if they're using biorhythms or what. So that's what this is coming down to. Damian Lillard wants to continue to play to finish the season. They're pretty much out of contention now, and they shut him down. Like, they're not going to let him play any more games this season. So it's not like we've been blaming the players, and my stance on this for a long time has been, well, but it's only a couple of guys doing it.
Right.
It's only like Kawhi Leonard. I think LeBron's doing a little bit, but according to all of these players, that's not the case. Like, this is not the players refusing to play. This is the teams are making business decisions for themselves. Plus, they want to be at their best in the playoffs. That's why they're doing it. So, as far as I'm concerned, 82 games is done.
And remember, I will say this in defense of the organizations. You can make more. You tend to make the money in the playoffs if you can get there. You know, so there is really incentive to get to the playoffs. And if you're really bad, then there's incentive to tank so you can get a really good player, and then you can be decent again, or you can at least get butts in the seats. So there is. I'll defend the organizations a little bit, from that standpoint. I get it; they do need to make money. That's fair.
Yeah, listen, and I completely understand, but we got to face the situation that we're in. 82 games is done. Guys are not going to play 82 games anymore. It's never going to happen. This is how this is going to work. And and by the way, there's no good logical reason why we play 82 games. We only do it because that's what we've been doing forever. That's the way it's always been done. There's no reason. There's no good reason. I mean, I understand the money, but I'm pretty sure the leagues make most of their money off the TV revenue anyway. I don't think extra 15, 20 games of gate revenue is making any difference to these franchises that are worth $4, $5, $6 billion. I don't think it makes any difference.
Yeah, and so just real quick, I mean, are the long seasons that we have for basketball and hockey and baseball, is that unique to North American sports? I mean, do they do that in like English Premier League and stuff? Like,
I don't know. I don't know about basketball over in Europe, but I know soccer that they'll play. They'll have different weeks where different stuff happens, but usually they'll play about 3 games a week. They'll play on the weekends, and then they'll play 1 game in the middle if they're
How long is the season?
If they're in a tournament. Well, it goes the same length. It's from like August to like the end of May.
Okay.
But they play, but in the Premier League, there's no playoffs. They just play 38 games, and it's whoever has the most points at the end wins. That's all there is. And then the Champions League is like a tournament that goes on from like September all the way to May. So you play those games intertwined intermittently, and then they have a couple other tournaments. They have like the FA Cup, which is all the teams, not only just in the Premier League, but throughout the country. Right, and then every country will have 3 or 4 different tournaments that you play in. So I want to say, all in all, it probably adds up to if you make it. Let's say you made it to the final of the Champions League and you won another trophy, right? You probably play 65 games, something like that. But I'm looking at the NBA schedule, and it's like. So wouldn't it make more sense to what I think they should do is lengthen out, you could not necessarily lengthen it, but just spread out the season a little bit more, right? Play 3 games a week. If you play 3 games a week starting from like the second week of October all the way through the second week of April, that's like 70 games.
Okay.
So, and then you start to play. Like, so I think there's just a little tweak. I know, like, I really don't think you need to play more than 50 if you want me to be completely honest.
Right.
But they've got to put something in that time slot. They've got to fill, they've got inventory to, you got to fill that space, which I get. So why not just spread it out a little bit more, play a couple of tournaments within the season where you play you play on the weekends, right? Just do exactly like soccer seems to me had to have the model. Everybody plays a game on the weekends, and then you play 1 game in the middle of the week that's like your tournament game. I don't see any reason why we can't do that, because these guys are just not going to play. I can't tell you the number of players, Paul George, Damian Lillard, who are just like, no, the team, they decide, like, they're taking us out.
Right.
Like, we're not getting the choice of whatever. And the Lakers are resting Anthony Davis because they need Anthony Davis in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there's yeah, it's just, I mean, when you think about it, these long seasons, I just think that it doesn't, I mean, particularly in like baseball, but it just doesn't make sense anymore because they started doing that a long time ago, and when you had less playoffs, right? Now in the NBA, you got 3 rounds of playoffs and the finals if you make it that far, and that's like, that's what is that? Another 25, 30 games maybe.
Oh yeah.
If you go the full the distance.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like I just think that was come up with a while ago, and it doesn't really make sense now. Now, I guess it only makes sense in so much as there's revenue associated with it. Other than that, I don't really think it makes sense. Because the sports that we have now, we're so focused on the end of the year. I mean, look, to be honest, it would probably be if you wanted to have more interest throughout the season, and that's why with college football, they didn't have a playoff for years, and they had the best regular season of any sport, professional or college,
right?
Because it's just like you got to watch the whole thing because you don't know, So, but now with the NBA, I mean, it's like, look, I really just watch the playoffs. Because it's just the regular season. It's like, oh, God, there's 82 fucking games. It's like, oh, they lost this one. Well, they're playing again in 2 or 3 days. So I don't,
Well, you go to tune into a game, right? Okay, the other night, Jokic is supposed to be playing against Embiid. Well, Embiid's injured. He doesn't play, right?
Yeah.
Giannis is supposed to be playing against Jokic. Jokic can't play. Like, it's like, why are we, what are we doing? Like, why are we wasting our energy with this when it's just a substandard product? So I know that the owners will not agree to this, but this is what it's going to be if they're going to continue. And by the way, the 65 game thing, you know how many guys like we're talking about for all NBA who aren't going to make 65 games? Steph Curry's not going to play 65 games. Like, I don't think Embiid is going to make it.
Yeah, no.
Like, so it's just like, what? Now we're going to put this game restriction in, and what's going to happen is the teams are just going to manipulate it. They're going to put the guy in the first quarter and then just take him out.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. Oh, that's all that's going to happen. They're going to be like, oh, he played in 72 games. Well, no, he didn't.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. He played in about 60. The rest of them, he just came in the first quarter and then left.
Right.
so it's just, yeah, it's.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
like
just overall, it's not. It's one of those things again where I just don't like. I'm not going to watch. I'm not going to watch regular season games if it's like, oh, these 2 teams are playing, but their best players aren't playing. Like, yeah, I'm probably not going to watch, but. Overall, I don't really care that much because, it's just, I don't know. It's hard for me to get mad at I guess the teams are sitting players out. I get it. I understand why they're doing it. I mean, if a player sits out, I understand why he's doing it. They're trying to preserve themselves for the playoffs. As far as, and the other thing is, people will point out players seem to get injured more now. I don't know if that's true or not. I legitimately don't know. I've heard people talk about, players are so focused on one sport, they should cross-train and whatever, and it's like, back in the 80s, players would they'd play a full game, and then they'd go have a couple beers, and, they'd play cards all night, and then they'd go play a couple days later, and they were fine. And it's like,
I think the athletes are so much better today. The game is so much more difficult to play, especially at a high level, right? And J.J. Redick was talking about this on Dan Patrick's show the other day, guys, we have all the data. This is the game is way more difficult to play now than it used to be, and it's impossible to play. We shouldn't be playing back-to-backs. We shouldn't be doing it. It's just it's ridiculous. And so I think they need to cut the number of games, and they need to find a different revenue stream to get the money back for it. Which blows my mind because it doesn't really matter. The next TV deal is going to be skyrocketing from where it is now.
Yeah.
They're going to be making, so it's just, it blows my mind. We don't need it. There's 20 to 25 games we don't need.
Yeah.
So it just blows my mind that they don't streamline it, because if you lowered it to 65 or 60 games, you're going to get better games. You're going to get a better product. So, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll point out, it's, so I just think for people who are listening to people talk about this on the radio or on TV or whatever, don't just start getting mad at the players and think the players aren't as committed as they used to be or whatever the case is. That's that's an oversimplified explanation of the issue. Okay, it really is, and it's kind of don't do the whole. You sound like Skip Bayless. It's like, oh well, Jordan just did this and blah 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 blah. It's like, yeah, he played 40 years ago. Okay, well 35, whatever. So it's just people need to. This is a way more complicated issue than people think it is. Okay, so that's my point.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think we need to. I just at this point, I just want to accept reality. I'm not going to try to. I want to stop trying to figure out why it's happening and just accept this is the reality. So let's adjust to it.
Yeah,
instead of trying to ram this down our throats. So I wanted to go through the Western Conference mess and talk about where we're at with it, because I feel like this changes on the hour. So. Surprisingly enough, Denver beating the Warriors last night was a huge win, because Memphis was kind of creeping up on them. Like, if they had lost that game, they would only have a 2-game lead for the 1 seed.
Right.
So they've now they have a 3-game lead. So it seems like, with 4 to go, so it seems like Denver's in pretty good shape as long as Jokic comes back. But I guess
what's happening with Jamal Murray?
He played really well against the Warriors.
Okay, he's playing. All right. Okay.
Yeah. No, he played really well against the Warriors, scored a bunch of points, played good defense. So I think we'll see what's going on with that. It seems like he's been playing better lately. Denver kind of had that slide a few weeks ago, and I think feel like they've kind of come around on it. But so this is my thought. Overall in the Western Conference, I think there are a whole bunch of teams that could win a series. I just don't know who could win. I just don't know who can win 3 of them.
Yeah, it may come down to matchups. Like, for instance, that's the problem. I think people forget seeding when they make these predictions and stuff. It's like, could I see the Lakers winning a series? I'm like, against who? Right. It depends who they're playing. What? I don't really know. And I think people are just kind of, they're trying to, no team, people don't want to believe in Denver, and no other team has really emerged. Every other team has a variety of issues, and so people are trying to, and it's just like, oh, well, Phoenix is clear. It's like, how can you think that? It's like, well, Durant's back. You think he's not going to get hurt again? Chris Paul could get hurt. They're so top heavy. One of those guys gets hurt, they are fucked. Okay, so I understand people because that's what they do, but it's just so hard to predict because all these teams have so many flaws. And I understand if you're apprehensive about Denver, but I do kind of feel like if you're really going to pick a team, I think you kind of got to go with them. And they're like, well, what about LeBron and Anthony Davis? What are we going to get from Anthony Davis?
Well, here's the thing. Let's talk about the Lakers first. So here's the thing with the Lakers. They beat Minnesota the other night. I think it was Saturday night. They beat or Friday night. They beat the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I'm kind of flipping back and forth between the women's tournament and that game. And they win the game, and the Lakers play well. But there's a point in the game where Anthony Davis comes down on somebody's ankle and is just rolling on the floor in agony, right? But he gets up, goes to the bench, and then comes back in the game and finishes the game. So, but this is the problem with the Lakers. They can't even win a game, and you're going, oh, I feel good about him now.
Yeah.
It's not even possible for them to do that. So it's just, I just don't know, what am I supposed to believe in here? Anthony Davis, by the way.
It's like, guys, are you going to rely on D'Angelo Russell in a really critical playoff situation? Okay, good luck with that.
It's touch and go. And then Anthony Davis kicks ass last night and has 40 points against Houston. And it's just like, Houston. All right. Right. Well, right. It's like, okay, well, it's back. It's just like, I just don't see the Lakers making it through. I think the easiest way to say it is I just don't see them staying healthy for 2 months. Yeah. There's just no way that's why I can't see them winning multiple series. Now, what I will say is, let's just looking from a matchup standpoint, the Lakers are going to be scary for a bunch of teams to play. If I'm Phoenix or Golden State, I don't want to see the Lakers.
Yeah.
Phoenix, now there's news today that Wiggins might come back for the playoffs. We'll see. But Phoenix has nobody to guard LeBron. And Anthony Davis owns DeAndre Ayton. So every time they play, he kicks his ass. So I'm like, if I'm Phoenix, I want no part of that. And if I'm the Warriors, I mean, good luck. They got nobody to guard Anthony Davis. And, maybe Wiggins comes back and helps on LeBron, but that's a nightmare for them to have to play that team. And you're going to get, look, in a series, you're going to get a couple of games where D'Angelo Russell's really good.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. He's going to have a couple of games where it's like, oh, man, this guy's really got it. And they have some length and defense. Like, they have some stuff that can cause you a problem, but it's hard for me to imagine. So there's a couple things I'm kind of looking forward to. Like, I would really like when Paul George got injured for the Clippers, looking at the standings, like I really felt like, okay, the Clippers are going to fall down to sixth, and then the Warriors are going to play the Suns in the first round, and one of those teams. So we're going to lose one of those teams in the first round. That's kind of what I was looking forward to. Because I kind of feel like that would be a hell of a series. It'd be pretty evenly matched, and both teams have a lot of stuff they do well and some stuff that they don't. So the other thing about going back to the Lakers is, can you imagine the Lakers playing against Phoenix? LeBron's just going to be bringing Chris Paul over for every pick and roll. He's like, let me just punish this little guy who's 38 years old. I'm just going to destroy him. So it's just, if there are some teams where I don't want to see the Lakers. Do I think the Lakers win 3 series? No. But could they end somebody's season in the first round? Absolutely.
Well, if they're playing Sacramento,
right?
Maybe, if they're playing, yeah. I mean, I guess you could see Denver having some problem with them. But again, they have home court. They'd have home court. But it's kind of like It's like for every one problem you can go, well, what about this? I mean, it's like yeah, what is Jokic going to do on defense? Yeah, but what are the Lakers going to do on defense against the Nuggets? Like what, right. I mean, I think you can kind of see there's little things here. So I guess I'm going to go with Denver. It's not like I feel great about it, but I don't feel great. Like, how can you, like, I guess that's my main complaint. How can you feel great about any of these teams? Like, literally, how can you be like, oh, well, clearly the Lakers? How can you feel good about them?
Well, it's proven true when you watch the games. You watch the games and you just go, oh man, I don't know about that. So like I'll give you an example. I'm watching the Warriors the other night. They're playing the Pelicans, right? And the Pelicans don't have Zion, but if you've watched the Pelicans play at all, they're super athletic and super long. Like they have guys who are just like unbelievable athletes. They got Brandon Ingram and Trey Murphy and Herb Jones and Valanciunas. Like they have a really nice team. It's really confusing how they're barely over 500 when they have as much talent as they do. And the first half, the Pelicans are just kicking the Warriors' ass, just beating them down the floor. The Warriors are turning the ball over. Like Stan Van Gundy's doing the game. He's having a heart attack. He's like, I can't believe they are this careless with the ball. How can a team this good? They turned the ball over 18 times in the first half. So the Pelicans are just like, and it's getting chippy out there. But then it's by the way, it's so typical as to what the Warriors do. Draymond Green starts some shit with somebody, right? He's yelling at refs, barking at people, doing what he does, getting the Pelicans all pissed off. The third quarter comes in. They go to the third quarter after halftime. Yeah. The Warriors come out in the third quarter and just blitz them. Just make a bunch of threes, look really good doing it, blah, blah, blah. The Pelicans come back, but the Warriors hang on to beat them because they played them at home. It was right. in San Francisco. So it's just like, and I'm watching this team going, this team's a fraud. Like, this is a complete fraud. And then I'm watching on B-Ball Breakdown on YouTube, and he's like, the Warriors have the 17th best defense in the NBA. They're 17th in defense. At home, they're third. On the road, they're 28th.
Yeah.
So it's just like, so let me get this straight. And he's basically like pointing out all of the stuff that they do wrong. And it's really confusing because it's all fixable. It's not like this is hard to do. Like all they got to do is rotate a little bit better, not overhelp. Like Draymond's pointing to guys where to go and they're just not doing it. So, and then they lose last night to Denver and Steve Kerr's like, yeah, they just stopped playing. I don't know what's going on with this team. So, there's something going on. Like,
yeah.
Because it's not, there's basketball reasons, sure, like they're kind of small and whatever, but that's not the overriding thing. Like there's other stuff going on there because it makes absolutely no sense why they play the way that they do.
Right.
So that's an example of just, and I'm just like, you can't win in the playoffs this way. You cannot fall behind by 20 all the time and think
Yeah.
that you're going to survive unless you're playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, then you might be able to beat them. But so I think
Right.
like if we were going through like a team's kryptonite, right? I mean, Denver's going to struggle with a really good defensive team. Okay, who is that? I'm looking at the standings. Who is it? Because the Clippers with Paul George out, okay, the Clippers might be pretty good on defense. Like they're pretty good. They're probably the best team that I'm looking at. The Lakers are okay, but there's no great defenses in the Western Conference. So that's the thing. Memphis needs to have Steven Adams back because they can't play Jaren Jackson at center all the time. They can do it part of the time, and they're really good when they do it. But it's one of those things. It's like when Draymond started playing center for the Warriors. They can't do it for 40 minutes. They can do it for 20.
Yeah.
Right? They can do it when they need it. So Memphis would have a serious problem having to play the Lakers. If they had to play the Lakers, that would be an issue because they do have some defenders, so that would really help them. Like if Memphis played the Warriors, I think Memphis would have a good shot to beat them because they have all of the defenders that you need, and the Warriors are going to have a hard time guarding, especially some of their players. Like I don't know who's guarding
Draymond Green will probably get suspended in that series.
Right.
Him and
Absolutely
Dylan Brooks
right.
will get into it, and he'll get a technical, and that'll be it.
But that's what I mean. That's what the Warriors are resorting to. They have to try to punk people. Draymond's got to try to act like an asshole so he can get underneath the team's skin to beat them. That's what they have to do because they can't beat them basketball-wise. Because the Pelicans were just kicking the shit out of them. I'm like, man, this is – and so it surprises me. I don't understand how the Pelicans aren't better. I really don't. They have more talent than just about any team out there. Forget the Zion thing. They don't need him. They have so many good players. It's a freak show. I think the Kings, Sacramento playing the Warriors would be fascinating because Sacramento in a couple of those home games, they might run the Warriors off the floor.
Right.
Because of how fast they are and how good on offense they are, how good in transition they are, they would cause serious issues. Now, I don't think Sacramento could beat the Lakers or the Suns. I mean, that's the thing. The Clippers, they're saying like Paul George won't be back until after the first round.
Yeah.
So the Clippers could be done.
Problem.
So I mean, Sacramento again. They if they played a good defensive team, they'd have a problem. But I'm trying to find. I don't know who that is. So I don't know who that is. I think the Lakers would probably beat them. The Suns. They're going to if they play a team that can score with them. It could be an issue. Now, most teams are going to have a really hard time stopping Durant and Booker and all that stuff. So that kind of gives them, I think, kind of a big advantage in any series that they play. But like I said, they wouldn't want to play the Lakers because matchup-wise, that's just a serious issue. The Clippers, to me, the Clippers are going out in the first round if Paul George is not playing because that means they're going to play Russell Westbrook 35 minutes a game.
Oh, God.
You can't do it. You can't do it. And it's like once Paul George got hurt, it like gave Ty Lue the green light to we got to play Westbrook now. It's just, and I've watched the Clippers play a few games, and I'm just like, you don't need Russell Westbrook out there. What are you doing?
Well, Russell, if you torpedoed the Lakers for a year and a half, now you can blow up the Clippers.
It's just so I don't see any way, like especially the Clippers play Sacramento in the first round. I don't see any way the Clippers are going to be in trouble unless Kawhi's going to score 40 points a game. That's a tough deal. So I think for the Warriors kryptonite to me is a team that has better athletes than them. So a team like New Orleans or Sacramento or Minnesota, they're going to be really difficult for the Warriors. Minnesota because of their size, and the athletes, like they just got it coming out of there. They're one of those teams. They have a bunch of athletes on their team. So those teams would give the Warriors a serious, like a really hard time. Now I don't think Minnesota can keep. I don't know if Minnesota can keep it together for 7 games. Karl Anthony Towns is going to have a hissy fit in one of the games and completely screw it up. So I don't know if they can pull it together, but. Those are teams. If I'm the Warriors or Oklahoma City for that matter, I don't want to see them. I don't want to see these super athletic teams that we're going to have a hard time guarding because they can't guard. They're not guarding people as it is. If they have to play a team that's with superior athletes, they're done. Yeah. So that's kind of going through, and then Dallas looks like they're a game out of the 10th seed. So it looks like Dallas may not even make it, which is awfully disturbing. And my thing on Dallas is this: they only have a couple of bullets they only got a couple of bullets left in the gun that they can use to try to get better players around Luka. And re-signing Kyrie Irving is a really bad idea. And they made everyone's like, well, they made the trade because they gotta make it look to Luka like they're trying to do stuff. It's like, yeah, but if you screw it up, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I just think they've made a couple errors. Like they tried the Porzingis thing, which I totally get behind. They made the trade to get out of it, which was fine. But then they made this trade, which compounds the problem. Like they needed to, and everybody's like, well, Dallas, they got to try to, what I think Dallas is suffering from is they got a little bit of false hope by going to the Western Conference Finals last year. Phoenix kind of fell apart in that series. And I think, so people think Dallas should be a contender every year. And they really needed to be patient. And they really should have waited. They should have waited to make the right move, but they got a new general manager, and I think he wanted to make something happen. And so they may have screwed this up. It may be, I still think there's a path, but they may be pretty close to irreparable now, because if they re-sign Kyrie, there's not a lot of moves left. They've got the Tim Hardaway contract, and that's about it. They're not going to have very much else they can use to try to trade. So I think I think it's a mistake. They should let Kyrie go. Yes, it affects you. You won't have as much cap space as his salary. That's fine. I get it. But they need to spend that stuff in other ways. They need to find more wings to play with Luka. And the perfect, like, everybody's like, oh, what's the perfect guy for Luka? We don't know what to do. It's like, I'll tell you, the perfect guy for Luka is a wing like Paul George. That's the perfect guy to play with him. You need a guy who's a really good defender, who can get his own shot, right? Can make plays off of other people, but he's not like I need the ball every 2 seconds. That's who needs to play with Luka, because you can't have your best two players who can't guard anybody.
Yeah.
So it's a serious issue. Now, let me tell you some things I'd really like to see. I would like to see the Lakers play the Clippers in the play-in. That would be fantastic. The game would be in L.A. The Laker fans would take over. The Clippers would hardly have any fans there because that's we all know how that works. So I'd really love to see that. I think a rematch between Minnesota and Memphis would be really fun.
Yeah.
If that came to fruition there, and then I think, I definitely think Lakers Sun would be fun, but I would really like Warriors Suns first round. Steph versus KD, I think that would be badass, because Phoenix feels like, well, we should have beat them. We should have gotten to them last year and beat them. And the Warriors won the title. So I feel like that would be really fascinating. Let's see if I got anything else here. But anyway, and we haven't talked about the NCAA tournament. I'll tell you what, I've enjoyed this NCAA tournament more than I have in years. I can't remember the last time. Like, it's been at least a decade since I actually kind of cared and was kind of into it a little bit. And part of it is because, it was fun watching FAU make it to the Final Four. That was really cool, but I've really enjoyed it. And the crazy part is, like, the women's tournament has actually been better. Like, the basketball is actually better. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, the women stay in college a lot longer, so they're a little more. Right. They play together a lot more, so that's part of it. But also, just the women's game looks much more like the men's. Well, it doesn't look like the men's game, because the men's game kind of sucks. It actually looks a lot more like a really good competitive basketball now than it ever used to. There's something about the shooting is much better. they do there's actual post play. Like players actually know how to make entry passes into the post, whereas in the NBA they can't even do that anymore because they never do it. So yeah, it's been it was a lot of fun. That championship game was fantastic. The winning team got 100 points in a 40-minute game. So I mean, nothing against and honestly the men's game, like my take on the men's college basketball is it depends on who's playing in the game, right? If the team's in it, like San Diego State, decides they just want to play defense and muck it up, okay, then the game kind of sucks. But if you get a team like UConn, or Houston that wants to, they want to get up and down the floor, or University of Miami, they want to get up and down the floor. They want to, get to open spots. They want to drive and kick. They want to do all the stuff that's good to watch in basketball. Then the game can be pretty good. But it totally depends upon who's playing.
Well, there's that, and then it's just, I mean, and we've talked about it, but it's just they're just some of these games, they let it get way too physical. I'm watching stuff and I'm like, that one guy fouled that guy like 3 times. Like, what are you, like, you're trying to guard somebody and you're just all over. It's like, what are you guys doing? Like, you got to let the players have more freedom of movement, and you got to start calling fouls on some of this stuff because it's ridiculous. You can't have people just flying around slamming into each other. Oh no, there's no foul there. I just, and I see him call stuff, and I'm like, they'll call a foul on one thing. I'm like, you called a foul on that? You didn't call a foul like 5 other fouls, that were way more physical than that. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing with it. Like, I don't understand what kind of game they're trying to have because, yeah, in the women's game they were just calling all of these like ridiculous, touch fouls, and like it was like this. And honestly, some of it was just, people were playing bad defense, but some of it was just we're just calling fouls. We're whistling everybody, and it's completely unnecessary. And then they called a ridiculous technical foul where, the player like just kind of threw the ball behind him to the sideline and then got into the huddle with their team, and they called a technical foul. And it was just like, what are we doing now? Like, I don't get where. So yeah, that they need to change that, especially in the men's game, to open it up a little bit, to make it, more appealing, because some of this is just nonsense. It's like, well, you wonder why these guys can't make shots. It's because they're being fouled constantly.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be fixed. It is nothing like the NBA or stuff that we're used to watching. Just because the talent level is just far, far different. And it's just the way the game is played it definitely needs some improvement. But a good tournament game is still a good tournament game. Like if you catch the right teams playing, it's still pretty good stuff. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I also think, there's a lot of stuff going on with college basketball now with the NIL and the transfer portal. It's kind of evened out the playing field out a little bit. So, we're still going to have the one and dones. And that's the other thing that came from the new CBA is that they were talking about changing the rule, allowing people to come to the NBA at 18, but they didn't do that. They're keeping the same, so it's still going to be guys can still go to college for a year. So I think we'll probably end up with a really good college team at some point, but there may be more tournaments like this. I think this was kind of a weird year where you just didn't have a lot of the best players didn't play college basketball. They went to the G League or they went to overtime unlimited or whatever it's called. And so that kind of happens sometimes, but regardless, look, it's a lot of fun. It's not what we grew up with, but the tournament is still creates that, urgency and fun stuff. So, but yeah, I definitely trust Denver the most. In the East, I still trust Milwaukee the most, but I think that, like, when we say, oh, well, okay, well, we like Milwaukee the best, we need to put a few caveats in there. It's like, no, Milwaukee's not unbeatable. This isn't an awesome team that oh, they're just going to, if they play their game, they'll run roughshod. They have games, like they got their ass kicked by the Celtics the other day by 40 points. They have games, if they're not making shots, it can start to look a little ugly. And it's like we're talking
criticisms we had of their coach, they still apply.
Yeah, I do think they have really they've really nailed down what they are at this point. So that they run their system really well, especially on defense. But I think that it's the question to me, like everyone talks about Giannis. The question to me is it's not Giannis. The question is are other people going to pick it up? Are other people going to be able to score enough, to be able to help them? And that's what it comes down to. The year they won the championship, we're all waiting. We're like, are Middleton and Holiday going to show up? And they finally did when their season was almost over. So I think it comes down to that. I think Boston. To me, it's just the fourth quarter. What's Boston going to be in the fourth quarter? Is their offense going to, run efficiently, or are they just going to have Tatum take step back threes?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to for me. Is Boston capable of it? Yes, they absolutely are. But we kept waiting last year in the postseason, and they kept kind of – and, that's the other thing. So the Celtics need to win the first round in 5 games. I don't care if they're playing the Heat. I don't care who they're playing. They should win the first round in 5 games. They need to get that over with and out of the way. Because if they're going to be the 2 seed and have to play Philadelphia in the second round, they need to be ready. So for me, as far as Boston goes, they got to get through the first 2 series as quickly as possible. That to me is the key. Like they let Miami hang around in that series and ended up in Game 7 and they almost lost.
Yep.
So, Boston you can't screw around. You got to be ready to go, and I hope they figure that out from last year because it does feel like in the finals they kind of ran out of gas.
Yeah.
And had they not had a 7-game series with Milwaukee and then a 7-game series with the Heat, maybe it's a different outcome. Anyway, all right. Anything else?
No.
All right, so we will definitely be back on. I think we'll have the next weekend. We'll know who's in the play-in and what some of the playoff matchups are.
Right.
So that'll be a good time. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. See you on the flip side.